Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be looking at my poorly Atari 130 XE. Now originally we did the keyboard membrane, which is a week or two ago, and that works fine. The keyboard now functions as it should do, but I still have an issue where the RAM and ROM test will come up. So I've decided I'm going to replace the RAM, and the RAM on the 130 XE is in two banks. There are two banks of 64K. Only the first bank is tested in the RAM test, so the first bank must by default be faulty, or is it? Let's see. Now what I'm going to do is first desolder the old RAM with my whatever it's called, A474A++. Or whatever it's called. Now this is a good bit of kit. It does occasionally get clogged up with a nozzle, but it seems to work fine. It takes probably half an hour to desolder all the RAM, so I did actually desolder both banks of RAM. Initially I did one side and I thought, well, you know, might as well do the other, in for a penny, in for a pound. I have ordered some RAM on eBay, which has arrived, which is enough to replace all the chips on the board. So I've decided I'm going to socket the whole two banks of RAM. So as you can see, I've already pasted the board with some flux, and most of the pins I've bent straight, but I seem to have missed one here. But I'm going to use my thumb just to flick it straight, just so I can get this desoldering station, or the tip of the soldering station, onto the pin and remove it with a bit of ease. That's the plan anyway. So with two banks of RAM desoldered, what I will do, the pins are obviously in place, and some of them are held in place still with just a little contact of solder. You'll remove it, but the pin will just touch the edge of the PCB. So what I tend to do is use a flat blade screwdriver or a hot soldering iron and just touch the pin. It's probably better to use a hot soldering iron, because you can just flick the pin and you make sure it's loose and not contacting the board in any way. When you've done that and you know the chips are loose, you should be able to just pop a pair of tweezers under there and lift it quite easily with very little resistance. There may be just a little bit, but hopefully if there's more than, I don't know, a small bit of resistance, then the legs of the chip you're trying to remove are probably connected in some way to the board. If a lot of solder has been used in manufacture, quite often the solder will bleed through to the other side of the board. So you will desolder it and think that it's clear, but there's a daub of solder on the other side. So it's always good to have a good look round, make sure it's all clear. Flux the board before you do it. Now I'm making a hash of this because I'm using one hand and videoing with the other hand, so it's more difficult than really need be, but it is easy. They do come out with relative ease, although I've read on one or two forums that these PCBs from Atari, the late ones anyway, especially in the 130 XE, were of quite low quality and were cheaply made, but seems okay to me, I don't know. Now with all the chips out, we can have a little look at the board, make sure all the traces are good and intact and there's nothing damaged, which there isn't. So what I might do, if needed, is run around it with a little bit of desolder wick and just make sure the holes are nice and clear before popping in the new sockets. Now I've bought fairly cheap sockets rather than the whatever they call them, the precision pin sockets. Not for any reasons, it's just that I bought these without thinking about it and really didn't think about ordering the better quality of sockets. I have no intention of removing these ever again if it works, so you know, these are the same sort of sockets that would have been used back in the 80s if Atari had used sockets. So I don't see any problem with using them. Although, if you want to be pedantic, then the engineered sockets, which are the round pin ones, they are much better and higher quality sockets, and preferably you would use them, although they are more expensive. So I'm going to replace or place the first bank of sockets onto the motherboard. I'm doing this one-handed because I'm filming again. And usually I'd use a camera steady or a tripod, but it was in another room. I couldn't be bothered to go get it, if I'm honest. So I'm just popping the sockets in, making sure the notch is the correct orientation for the RAM. If you look at the little white rectangle that's drawn that says U26, 27, 28 and various other numbers, you'll see a little notch on the left hand side near that, whatever that is, a little capacitor I guess, and that little notch denotes which way around the RAM goes. So you make the socket the same way and you pop the RAM back in the same way as well. So with the sockets in place, I can now start soldering them in. I've already done quite a few of these. This video was captured a little later on in the procedure, but it's fairly straightforward. Nice and easy. It's pre-fluxed. I have fluxed it already with some good quality flux, and it has a little touch-up brush, or a little brush which is like a touch-up brush if you remember doing that on cars in the olden days. So you can just paste it on and away you go. Soldering only takes, I don't know, less than a minute to chip. I should think it's quite quick and quite easy. It's important not to bridge the contacts. You don't want to put a big dollop of solder on there. Try to keep it neat. If you keep it neat and tidy, it will look good and you've got less chance of breaking anything. So it's quite important to be neat and have a steady hand. I'm wearing my glasses at this point because my eyes are not as good as they used to be in the olden days, but there we go. That's old age for you. So now we've got the sockets in place, we can start thinking about popping the RAM in. Now, like I say, I did order 2 banks of RAM. I think they came from Bulgaria or somewhere on eBay. They're not MT RAM, I forget what the name is at the moment, but they are better quality than the original RAM that Atari used. So hopefully this will cure my problems with this machine. Now what tends to happen is when I power this machine up, it will either jump straight to a ROM-RAM test, or it will boot to Notepad, which it should do, and everything's fine and dandy. But when I try to load anything from my SD Max, the screen will be corrupt and it will just go crazy. Now, 9 times out of 10, it won't do that. It will just boot to the ROM-RAM test, and it will show a whole section of red squares where the RAM has failed. Hopefully it won't do that now. So as you can see, we have the RAM in place. Correct orientation, the notches are all to the left as they should be. I've just put 1 bank in to try and see if it does a RAM check and everything's good. It should make no difference whether it's 1 bank or 2 bank fitted, as unfortunately the RAM test that's included from Atari only checks the first 64K, not the whole 130K or 128. Hopefully there's some software I can run that will check the whole RAM, or then again, if there's an error, perhaps I'll just turn it on and we'll get the familiar green screen with the ROM-RAM test. But here we go. Everything worked out fine, everything's good. This is with 1 bank of RAM fitted. I'll put the rest of the RAM in later and we'll give it another go. But as you can see, this RAM test has been running now for about an hour, and that little white box moves along. And it's all good. If you get an error, it'll come up with a red box. If it's good, you get a green box. I'm not sure how accurate this thing is. I've read reports of it not being particularly accurate, but it's all I've got to test at the moment. So we'll give it a go now. We'll try to play some games, see if my SD Max works. Hopefully it does, and I'll post another video very soon with another update. So thank you very much for spending time with me this evening and watching my RAM replacement test on the Atari 130 XE. Have a pleasant evening and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.